Hello, this is Spellbinder with an article that I forgot about. I read several years ago. I actually knew this from another book. Can't remember it offhand. But it's called The Eight Veils. V-E-I-L-S. Veils. By Don Hawkins. December 2001. Idaho Observer. Over the past several years, I have invoked and discarded several theories in an attempt to explain why it is most people cannot see truth, even when it smacks them in the face. Those of us who can see the conspiracy have participated in countless conversations amongst ourselves and addressed the frustration of most people's inability to comprehend the extremely well-documented arguments which we use to describe the process of our collective enslavement and exploitation. The most common explanation to be arrived at is that most people just don't want to see what is really going on. Extremely evil men and women who make up the world's most powerful elite have cleverly cultivated a virtual posture so grass-green that few people seldom, if ever, bother to look up from where they are grazing long enough to notice the brightly colored tags stapled to their ears, also known as sheeple. The same people who cannot see their enslavement for the pasture grass have a tendency to view as insane the conspiracy theorists, those of us who can see past the farm and into the parlor of his feudal lordship's castle. Finally, I understand why. It's not that most people do not see their freedom is vanishing under the leadership of the power elite, don't want to see it. They just can't see what's happening to them because of the unperceived veils that block their view. All human endeavors are a filtration process. Sports is one of the best examples. We play civic sports until we get kicked off the playground. The pro athletes we pay big bucks to watch just never got kicked off the playground. Where millions of kids play Little League each spring, they are filtered out until there are about 50 guys who go to the World Series in October. Behind the first veil, there are over 6 billion people on the planet. Most of them live and die without having seriously comprehended anything other than what it takes to keep their lives together. 90% of all humanity will live and die without having perceived the first veil. Then there are the next 90% of that. The first veil. 10% of us will perceive the first veil and will find the world of politics. We will vote, be active, and have an opinion. Our opinions are shaped by the physical world around us. We have a tendency to accept that government officials, network media personalities, and other experts are voices of authority. 90% of the people in this group will live and die without having to perceive the second valve. The second valve, 90% of us of the second valve. 10% of us will perceive the second valve to explore the world of history, the relationship between man and government, and the meaning of self-government through constitutional and common law. 90% of people in this group will live and die without having perceived the third veil. Now 90% of the third veil, 10% of us will perceive the third veil to find that the resources of the world include people are controlled by extremely wealthy and powerful families whose incorporated old world assets have, with modern extortion strategies, become the foundation upon which the world's economy is currently indebted. 90% of the people in this group will live and die without having perceived the fourth valve. The fourth valve. 10% of us will perceive the fourth valve to discover the Illuminati, the Freemasonries, and other secret societies. These societies use symbols and perform ceremonies that are perpetuated the generation transfers of arcane knowledge that is used to keep the ordinary people in political, economic, and spiritual bondage to the oldest bloodlines on earth. 90% of the people in this group will live and die without haven't perceived the fifth valve. The fifth valve. 10% of us will perceive the fifth valve and learn that the secret societies are so far advanced technologically that time travel and interstellar communications have no boundaries, and controlling the actions of people is what their members do as offhandedly as we tell our children when we must go to bed. 90% of the people in this group will live and die without having perceived the sixth valve. The sixth valve. 10% of us will perceive the sixth valve, where dragons and lizards and aliens we thought were fictional monsters of childhood literature are real and are controlling the forces behind the secret societies. 90% of the people in this group will live and die without perceiving the seventh valve. The seventh valve. I do not know what's behind the seventh valve. I think it is where your soul is evolved to the point where it can exist on earth and be a man of Gandhi was, or a woman. Peace Pilgrim was people so enlightened they brighten the world around them no matter what. The eighth valve. Piercing the eighth veil probably reveals God and pure energy that is the life force in all living things, which are, I think, one and the same. If my math is accurate, and there are only 60,000 people on the planet who have perceived the sixth valve, the irony here is too incredible. Those are the stuck behind valves 1 through 5 have little choice but to view the people who have perceived the valves beyond them as insane. With each valve pierced, exponentially shrinking numbers of increasingly enlightened people are deemed insane by the exponentially increasing masses of decreasing enlightened people, in other words, the lower valves. Adding to the irony, the harder a sixth or better valor tries to explain what he is able to see to those who can't, the more insane he appears to them. Our enemy, the state. Behind the first two valves we find the great majority of people on the planet. They are tools of the state. Second valors are the gullible voters whose ignorance justify the actions of politicians who sent the first valors off to die in foreign lands as cannon fodder. Their combined stations in life are to be believed that the self-serving mechanisms of power elite are matters of national security worth dying for. The third, fourth, fifth valors are increasingly liable to the state because of their increasing ability to be used as tools to consolidate power and wealth of the many into the hands of the power elite. It is common for those people to sacrifice more of their relationship with friends and family, their professional careers and personal freedoms with each valor they perceive. Albert J. Nock, 1870 to 1945, author of Our Enemy, the State, 1935, explained what happens to those who find the seventh and eighth valves. What was the best that the state could find to do with an actual Socrates or an actual Jesus when it had them? Merely to poison one and crucify the other, for no reason but they are too intolerably embarrassing to be allowed to live any longer. Conclusion? And so we know that it's not that our countrymen are so committed to their lives that they don't want to see the mechanisms of their enslavement and exploitation. They simply can't see it as surely as I cannot see what's on the other side of a closed curtain. The purpose of the essay is threefold: to help the handful of people in the latter valves to understand why the masses have little choice but to interpret their clarity as insanity. 2. To help people behind the first two valves understand that living, breathing, and thinking are just the beginning. And 3. Show people that the greatest adventure of our life is behind the next veil, because that is just one less veil between ourselves and God. In other words, we've been cut off by God by these people who perceive the first, or the eighth valve, I should say, and use it to exploit the lower valves. Remember that. When you're looking at the banksters and the politicians and the ones who are in Freemasonry and the higher levels, 33 and above, know what they're doing to you. Well, this is Spellbinder. I say, be good at it, and have a good day.